Welcome back to Around the Shoe on the Bill and Doug Show. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, joined every week by two tremendous media members who know lots of stuff about Ohio State football. This week, two new guests. So excited to have them. Jonah Booker from Bucknuts and Chase Brown from 11 Warriors. Gentlemen, thank you for your time today. We're very excited to have you. JBook, tell the people how long you've been around Ohio State football, how you got into this kind of thing. You're the guy who knows everything about what's being said, what's going on around the Buckeyes. JBook, how'd you get into doing this thing?
Yeah, I've been doing the Bucknuts Friday show with Dave Biddle for probably about 13 years. When we first started, before the actual podcast, it was the old school call in through the phone and do the audio recording, and we used to push it out. So that's when I started. I actually started on the message boards, and Twitter's been really hot and active. And it was back when you can just have a free flowing conversation, not so much how it is now. And it kind of just started like, hey, I have a thought here. Why are they running to the short side of the field on 3rd and 2 and not giving Carlos Hyde the ball? And it was just subconscious thoughts tweeted out. And the next thing you know, a bunch of people say, hey, you're right. And it just kind of developed a following that way. But I'm honored to be here with you guys. As I said, behind the show, I love your guys' work. And you guys are one of the best podcasts that I always listen to whenever you guys drop content. So it's an honor to be here.
Well, we appreciate having you, JBook. Thank you for your time. Chase Brown, how long you been at 11 Warriors? How long you been doing this Buckeye thing?
Yeah, I was an Ohio State student from 2018 to 2022. And around 2020, the COVID time, I started writing for the Lantern. And through that, got an opportunity at Buckeye Sports Bulletin for my senior year in 2021 is when I started on the Ohio State football beat. And then in 2022, 11 Warriors had an opening. I've started writing the school session at that time, and then also doing some social media stuff as well. So it's hard to believe, but this 2026 season will be my 5th year covering the football team, and my 4th at 11 Warriors. So it's been going along and kind of going along steady. So I've been enjoying it, and I look forward to another year on the beat.
Look at those gray hairs on Chase. Look at this old man. I've been doing it for 5 years now. I remember back in 2020. Chase, thank you for your time. We very much appreciate you being here. We love reading you and listening to you over on 11 Warriors. Let's get to our 5 topics about Ohio State football, some other stuff around the sport. We'll start with you, Jonah Booker. Question number 1. Now we have the full Ohio State schedule. Everybody did this on Tuesday. The schedule came out. There's a bye before USC. Then they have to play Oregon. How it's all going to shake down. Now that we have it, what is the % chance that Ohio State goes 12-0 in the 2026 regular season? And again, like as a reminder to people, it's not like they go 12-0 in the regular season every year. They did it in 2025, and like you kind of look back and it's like, wow, that's like a pretty good accomplishment. But you look at this schedule, there's a lot of potentially ranked teams on there, JBook. % chance we're looking at a 12-0 season for the Buckeyes.
I give it about a 15% chance. It's extremely difficult to go 12-0, especially when you look at this schedule. You're talking about 5 tough road games here. The thing about Ohio State, they're probably going to be the most talented team on the roster. However, when you look at this schedule, the thing that does concern me, and I'm curious to see what the offense looks like under Arthur Smith. How do they operate? How fast are they moving? The thing that we noticed against Indiana and Miami, 2 matchup games, they moved extremely slow. What did that do? That only gave them limited amount of possessions. When you're operating that slow, especially in the 4th quarter, the margin of error is so thin that you basically have to score touchdowns almost on every single drive. When you look at that national championship against Indiana, Miami, both of those teams each had 4 possessions in the 4th quarter. You can argue that each one of them needed those possessions. For Ohio State, are you going to pick up the pace in these matchup type of games? Because if not, you're going to be in a lot of battles, and you're going to need the ball to really bounce your way. Injuries, and staying healthy to go 12-0. So for me, I look at it about a 15% chance. 9-3, 10-2, 11-1. I lean towards more of a 10-2 type of team, 11-1. And then win that Michigan game. And if that's the case, you're talking about a playoff team here.
Landis, JBook's leading us toward a pace of play conversation. We could derail this whole show if we want, Bill. Do we want to do that?
It's not one of our 5 predetermined topics, but I have about an hour's worth of conversation, I think, on that if you want to do it.
It is fascinating. Like I know it's a topic for all of us. It's for all Ohio State fans. It's like you have this offense and why you playing so slow. I'm really curious, JBook. Just thinking about that generally, are they going to get off of that a little bit? Are they going to change a little bit, change that approach a little bit in 2026? So I'm curious, like this is going to be a fun schedule. And this is one of those things that's always like for Ohio State fans, hey, you're playing a bunch of great teams. Isn't that fun? Then it's like, actually, you might lose a few more games. Is losing fun? I don't know. But there's like, they might wind up with 6th ranked teams, Chase Brown, by the time, like you're looking at a 12-game schedule. Yeah. 6 of those could be against ranked teams, which to me, Chase, like, right, 12-0 gets pretty hard then. What's your percent chance?
Yeah, I'm not great with numbers. Now I'm trying to do the numbers in my head. What's 1 and 6? Probably around like 18% is what I'm going to give their chances. Because you think about those
stats analyst around here.
Don't ask me because I think you're right that like the Sports Illustrated, if you take their way too early top 25 poll, they were the outlet that had 6 teams on Ohio State's schedule ranked in the top 16 going into the year. And when you consider the environments that Ohio State's going to have to play in, they're going to go to Austin, they're going to go to Kinnick, play in Iowa. They're going to go to Memorial Stadium and play at Indiana. They have to go out west to Los Angeles to the Coliseum. And then right after that, they got to come back and play Oregon, a team that's got Dante Moore coming back for his 2nd year as a starter there. And then you also have a game against Michigan at the end of the year that is always intense. And so I think that there are plenty of matchups on this schedule that you look at and you circle them as a fan. You're probably like, oh, this is going to be really exciting. But the trade-off there is, right now, I feel probably most comfortable in Ohio State being 10-2. At the end of the year, I don't know where I would necessarily rank the opponents in terms of my confidence in Ohio State beating them versus how unconfident I would be in those results. But I just think that you look at the schedule, you see the strength of record, you see the strength of the schedule and the opponents, that you kind of have to kind of etch in pen a loss at some point for Ohio State, I would think. So I'm not really confident that they would go back-to-back undefeated, but should still be a 9-win, 10-win team at the end of this year.
Yeah, I guess I both of you guys have brought up the idea of a 9-win season, just kind of like brushed past it and then got like, I'll play more like 10. I will just tell you, predicting 9-win seasons for Ohio State is very dangerous. The fans do not let you forget that. So just like I would be careful if you're thinking that Ohio State might go 9-3, maybe just keep that to yourself. Anyway, Bill Landis, give us your percent chance, and then there's a conversation I want to have around this that one of our Substack subscribers brought up. But what's your percent chance?
Yeah. By the way, guys, Doug picked Ohio State to go 9-3 in 2019. That's why he said that. My percent chance is like 10-12%. I think it's pretty low. And you can look at the schedule and see all these tough road games, and I think get there pretty quickly. You can look at how like the USC and Oregon game, I think specifically stack up and think like, boy, that's going to be kind of a tough stretch. Like late or mid-October to like the first week of November really is a heck of a stretch for Ohio State. But the other part of it for me is like last year of Ohio State's 12 opponents, nobody really ended up being as good as we thought they were going to be. And there wasn't like a surprise, oh, actually this team's pretty good, that kind of showed up on the schedule too. And it just feels really unlikely that that's going to happen again. So I think that at least a few of these teams that we think are going to be legit going into 2026 are in fact going to be. And I just think that creates a pretty treacherous path for Ohio State. So I'm sort of in the 10-2 world right now as well. I'll keep thinking about it to see if I can be confident in a third loss. I don't know that I would be at the moment, but even if they do get that, I still think they can be a playoff team at 9-3. But the idea of going 12-0 against this slate feels nearly impossible, especially by the standards, or even considering the standards of Ohio State, which has done it against tough schedules in the past.
So I think I might be at 5% because I think it would be a chance maybe to be the best regular season in Ohio State history.
Yeah,
if they would go 12-0 because of how many potentially, if they end up playing half their teams or ranked teams, that's kind of unprecedented. Like in 2006, of course, they played 2 number 2 teams in the regular season in Texas, and then the Michigan game at the end of the year. That's probably the best regular season in Ohio State history. We know how that ended. They played 4 ranked teams that year. The 2002 team that won undefeated, they played 4 ranked teams in the regular season. Like, you just look back at some of the recent undefeated regular seasons, 4 ranked teams in 2019, but the ranked teams were Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State at 8, and Michigan. In 2013, they went 12-0. They played 2 ranked teams. In 2012, they played 3 ranked teams, but they were all in the 20s, right? The idea of like what Texas could be, what Indiana could be, what Oregon could be, what Michigan could be. I just think there's such a small chance of it that I don't want to say 0% chance, but like I almost think it's so daunting. But here's the 2 things I want to ask about, because this has come up on our show, JBook. I don't really like silver lining discussions of like, you know what? It was great that team lost, and that was a wonderful thing. And the loss is what propelled them onto a thing, even though that happened. And, that's part of the story of 2024. Bill brought up the idea of like the changes that they made defensively after the loss at Oregon, even in 2024, not just the Michigan game, like that mattered. So there's the idea of, can a loss actually help you? And then one of our Substack subscribers, you can find us at Bill and Doug, OSU.substack.com. One of the Substack subscribers, JBook, said, I'd rather they experiment and figure some stuff out and maybe try some things and maybe lose, but have like a full grasp of what they can and can't do. Is that something that it's not like we're going to lose on purpose, but we're going to go into some of these tough games and push the envelope. We're going to try trick plays. We're going to go for it on 4th down. We're going to fake a punt. We're going to go up tempo to see what happens. Like, would that make sense to sort of like make sure they exercise all their muscles during the 12 regular season games, knowing you don't have to be perfect to make the playoff, but you want to figure out who you are during the regular season?
What this schedule does, it creates a sense of urgency from the start. And we saw that Ohio State operating with a sense of urgency when they got into the playoffs in 2024 after that loss to Michigan. And that's when you really saw this program operating like the Death Star, because they had their backs to the wall. When you go into this schedule, you know that, hey, if we don't play our A game, there is a very good chance that we can lose to any of these opponents. Ryan Day has never had a situation since he's been at Ohio State, from the time that they started the season to the very end, to where he had to operate with an urgency. You look at that schedule last year between Texas and Michigan, they basically treated the middle of that schedule like it was NFL preseason in August. They were just coasting, and then once they had to operate with an urgency, they weren't able to do it. So when you have a team with this much talent, and we all think that they're going to be extremely well coached, if they're operating to say, hey, we're fighting week in and week out like our lives depend on it, that's going to be extremely fascinating, because you might see a different Ohio State that we haven't seen in years past, which is, hey, let's put the pedal down from the start, from the word go, not because it's a luxury, it's because we have to. And if we don't, we can find ourselves in a lot of trouble. And that's why a lot of Ohio State fans are hoping that Ryan Day potentially learned his lesson with his infamous words that if we need to turn up the gas, we're able to do it. They never saw that. So now he's going into the season, in the regular season, and he has no choice but to put the pedal down. If not, it could be a word of hurt.
I like too how the schedule sets up from like a stylistic standpoint. I just think they're going to get a ton of really good. Ryan Day always talks about like getting feedback, and like sometimes Ohio State gets it in the regular season, and sometimes frankly they don't. And I don't think they really got any of it last year after that Texas game. But if you think about like, we know what Texas is supposed to be, right? They're probably going to have a pretty strong defense. I think Oregon's going to have like a top 10 defense. Indiana should have a very good defense. You're going to get the slowed down big personnel stylings of Iowa. You're going to get this spread out pass attack of a USC. You're going to have to play in some tough road environments. You're going to have good teams coming to your building. Like, if you just sort of imagine any sort of like style scenario you could find yourself in throughout the course of regular season, I think Ohio State's pretty likely to encounter almost all of them this year with the way that the schedule sets out and who they have to play. And that makes it difficult. But by the time they get through it, if they're positioned to be in the playoff, they're going to know a lot about themselves. And I think in a way that's going to be really beneficial to them in the postseason.
And if I can add to that real quick, Doug, because the reality is I covered the radio show when Ryan Day said, we'll turn up the gas when we have to. And I created the graphic for that I've now seen sent around social media for the past, 2 months. I think the Mike Tyson quote applies, that everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And I think that is something Ohio State's going to, unfortunately, maybe some fans don't want to hear this. They're going to get punched in the face a couple of times next year. And that might result in this team improving for the better. As Bill is saying, I think this team is going to have plenty of opportunities to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out what the best version of themselves looks like before they get to the games that they talk about being the goals for the program every year. And that's beating Michigan, winning a Big Ten title, and winning the national championship. You're going to have plenty of chances to see this team evolve before that happens, whether they win or lose games. I think those opponents are going to force them to evolve in many different ways.
I mean, it is like one of those when you have the choice to put the gas down, or, you look in your rearview mirror and Dan Lanning and Kurt Signetti and Kyle Whittingham and Steve Sarkisian are back there. And he's like, man, there's Kirk Ferentz on a combine. We got to put the gas down right now. This isn't a decision to put the gas down. Like, he's making us look he's super tall up there. I think it's always one of those, like, it's fun. It's interesting to talk about. And then it's like to sort of help like guide the fans through, like, you might lose. But I do think we are fully, I think now, getting ready for the third year of the 12-team playoff. We're out of 12-0 or bust territory. I think it's not, again, is it a silver lining? I don't know, but like, you want your conference to be good. You want to be tested. There is an end game that probably does help you, and that, like, a really strong regular season where you play a bunch of good teams and you go 10-2 and you go into the playoff battle tested. I actually think a lot of Ohio State fans would take that. I don't know that they're going to be like 10-2, and if going into the playoff, they're like, what's wrong with us? Like, no, like, we're ready for this. I'll be curious to see how that plays out. All right, Chase Brown, question number 2 to you. Robby Discher from Illinois coming to be the new special teams coach for the Ohio State Buckeyes. On a scale of 1 to 100, how much of a difference do you think this new special teams coach could make for Ohio State? 1 is no impact. 100 is like it changes the face of Ohio State football.
I was listening to your grades for Ohio State hiring Arthur Smith, and I think that both Andy and Colton had grades in the low 80s, and then you guys kind of bumped it up a little bit. So I think I settled around the high 80s for what his impact can be, because I think that Robby Discher, I should probably give a number, maybe 87, 88, a high B. I think that number is indicative of someone who's had success as a special teams coordinator across several different stops. His most recent stop under Brett Bielema at Illinois, I think, showed some things that he is going to create some consistency for Ohio State's special teams game. I think the past 2 years, without a special teams coordinator, Ohio State struggled to have consistency across its punting, kicking, and return games. I think Rob Keyes is a great coach. I think he did some great things over at Findlay before coming to Ohio State, but to ask him to kind of be the de facto special teams coordinator, I think was maybe putting a little bit too much on his plate. And then not to mention giving responsibilities like the return game to coaches like Brian Hartline and James Laurinaitis and Matt Guerrieri, Keenan Bailey, guys like that. To have one voice, I think, is just going to create enough of an impact that Ohio State special teams should improve in its first season, and then for as long as Discher is around. I think that this is going to create an opportunity for Ohio State to really be explosive in the return games as well. I really took notice of Ryan Day comparing Legend Bay to Tyreek Hill, a poor man's Tyreek Hill. He said, is that possible that Legend Bay could be an immediate impact player on special teams, like a kick returner? I don't know that maybe Ryan Day is going to be as confident to have him returning punts in Austin in week 2, but maybe could you sprinkle him in the season opener against Ball State? Could you have him take some reps against Kent State the following week after the Texas game? what could Disher do to kind of innovate that realm for Ohio State, one that maybe Ryan Day has overlooked in the past few years without having a fully dedicated special teams coordinator.
All right, we'll take it to 87 from Chase. Landis, what's your number?
Yeah, similar. I'd probably be close to a 90, and I'll just say I'll say 90. Like I don't say that to put necessarily like outsized expectations on what this hire could mean, but the idea of Ohio State sort of finally weaponizing its special teams operation is pretty exciting to me, and I don't know how far they might go with that, but I was just trying to like rack my brain for the most memorable like special teams plays that have happened in my time covering Ohio State. And I'm sure I'll miss some that did happen in big games, but it feels more often than not they just kind of happen in the run of the mill middle of the season Big Ten games, right? Like they ran that punt return this year where the lateral from Brandon Ennis to Lorenzo Styles against Minnesota when I think they were already up like 2 or 3 scores. They had that onside kick against Maryland in Ryan Day's first year when they were already up 3 scores and on their way to winning by 1 billion scores, right? Like they do these things to sort of get them on tape or whatever in the games that don't have a lot of meaning, and certainly games that don't have a lot of high leverage moments. But then when they get to the high leverage games, they don't have them. And you know, sometimes they're good enough to win those high leverage games by a margin that doesn't require them. But especially lately, like some of these the 2 games that ended this season, right? Like there were moments there maybe, and I'm not even talking about missed kicks, just like, you know, on punts, punt returns, going after blocks, that kind of stuff. Like they just don't seem to do a whole lot of that. And I'm hopeful anyway that a hire like this, you know, not merely having a special teams coordinator, but one with the track record of Robby Discher and his experience doing it, unlock some of that, because there's no reason that Ohio State, as it seeks to be the best in the country on offense and defense, shouldn't do the same on special teams. And I'm really hopeful that this hire pushes them more in that direction.
I got to say something about Legend Bay, because I've been thinking about this, because people have been saying stuff, and I heard the Tyreek Hill thing, and Landis was comparing him to Curtis Samuel potentially in our chat, and I'm not worried's the wrong word, because when he was healthy, he was exciting, but I'm getting some Dontre Wilson vibes, just like and that makes me a little worried, because I have a terrible memory, but I have very vivid memories of being at Big Ten media days, Dontre Wilson's true freshman year, and just the conversation being like, so Dontre Wilson is definitely the greatest player in Ohio State history, or maybe the greatest player in Ohio State history. And everybody on the team was like, no, he is going to be. And then like he was a better true freshman than Ezekiel Elliott was. And then it was just like he's also like legend based from Texas, right? Dontre Wilson from Texas. Like I'm just
both from Dallas suburbs.
I'm not talking about Legend Bay anymore, because if we let ourselves, right, JBook, this is not a Legend Bay question, but if we let ourselves talk about Legend Bay, we're not going to talk about anything else until the first game, right?
Oh, he's definitely one that is already a fan favorite, especially when you look at the way his recruitment went. And when you talk about a guy with those type of comparison, anytime you can throw out Tyreek, the first thing that you think of, someone who's going to be a home run hitter. And so when Ryan Day throwing that out there, that raised some eyebrows for me. It's like, oh, he's speed. We knew he was a speed guy, but you're talking about a really, really fast type of toy that Ohio State doesn't have on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about him, by the way. I'm not going to talk about him.
I'm just going to sit with my arms folded. And it's not that I don't believe it. It's that I'm too excited about it. We're all getting too excited. 90 for Robby Discher. And the thing is, I think he might be the most qualified special teams coach that Ohio State has ever hired to be the special teams coach. Because like the thing we talk about with special teams, like Urban really cared about special teams and Tressel really cared about special teams. But you look at like the people they had as their special teams coach, like Tressel, like in year 2 and 3, like bumped up Luke Fickell to be the special teams coach. It's like Luke Fickell, it's like he's a defensive tackle. What do we think, the special teams coach? And then they kind of split it up the rest of a lot of Tressel's tenure, right? Urban just told Kerry Combs, he was like, hey, did you do special teams at Cincinnati for a couple of years? And Kerry Combs was like, yeah. He's like, you're the special teams coach now. Kerry Combs was like, I was in high school 8 years ago. What are we doing? Like this, you know, Ryan Day hired Matt Barnes, right, as the assistant safeties coach, but also special teams coach. And wasn't it like they played Maryland and Maryland did some fancy special team stuff and Ryan Day liked it? Wasn't that part of the reason they hired Matt Barnes? And then 2 years in, they're like, Matt Barnes, you're the defensive coordinator. And he was like, what? I'm the defensive. I'm here to call trick plays on punt. What are you doing? And then Parker Fleming, who I also don't want to talk about. But like, so this just like hiring a qualified person who has coached the position for 10 years. It's a little bit like, to me, like Arthur Smith. It's like, I don't know, but his resume is qualified. So Rob, like that, just that alone, a qualified veteran coach who's done it, it's good enough for me. I'll make it a 90. JBook, where are you on this Discher hire?
I'm about an 85. You look at Ohio State special teams ranked last year, 67th in ESPN SP metric. You look at Illinois, they were 30th nationally, 16th a year before. How much better of a football team is Ohio State if he can get them into the top 25 ranked special team? And that's just being generous. Like, hey, if they get to top 15, like how much better would this football team be? I do believe you will see a more productive special team. There is something to be said about having one guy focusing on how can we be the best special teams unit in college football. If there is something broke, Robby should be capable of being able to lock in and fix the problem. Attention to detail was always something that was always missing from Ryan Day's special teams, even under the Parker Fleming era. So fingers crossed, he is better than him. When you farm out special teams to position coaches, as Chase said, how much attention are these guys giving to those special teams units? They obviously have their plates full, focusing on their own position group. Now that you bring a guy in, from the time that he clocks into the building and the time that he walks out, his sole purpose is, let's figure out how we can have the best unit in all of college football. Because when you look at some of these losses under Ryan Day, you can attribute it back to poor special teams. Potentially probably cost Ohio State another national championship as well because of the special teams. So to me, this signals that they are taking it serious. We talked about the schedule. The margin of error is going to be extremely thin. And if you can have a rock solid special teams, especially when these tight fourth quarter games, it's going to go a long way.
Yep. And the thing about it is, like, back in the day, if you were hiring a special teams coach, that was a different coach that you weren't hiring, right? When they fired Parker Fleming and they hired James Laurinaitis, it was like, was that an option the whole time? You could have had James Laurinaitis instead of the special teams guy. And it was like, that was the balance of, well, should you have one? Should you not have one? Question number 3, Bill Landis, like, for instance, that balance is gone. With the rule change and the unlimited number of full coaches now who can coach on the field during practice, Ohio State's going to have 12 full-time assistant coaches now. With the hires of Discher and Smith getting to 12, what word or phrase would you use to describe the Buckeyes going from 10 assistants to 12? And I don't know the number. It's a worthwhile offseason project. Maybe somebody else will do it. We can just reference it on a show. That's what you do on a podcast. Let someone else do the work, and you just reference it and credit it. I don't know how many other major college football teams are going to have 12 full-time assistants like this, but how would you describe the fact that Ohio State's going to?
My phrase would be, this is what the money's for. I think, like, we had Ross Bjork on our show a couple weeks ago, and he was like trumpeting the idea of removing like the rev share cap for player acquisition, because he knows how well Ohio State would be positioned if college football chose to do that. There are like not parameters around the NIL stuff, but it's a moving target. You can never be quite sure what that number is going to be when you talk about outside NIL money, but you know how much money you generate as an athletic department at Ohio State, and it's a lot. And I think this shows that, like, they're willing to stretch the limits of that and even like kind of set new standards if they can operate within the money that they know they have. And Ohio State doing this with this coaching staff, I think is maybe the best sign of that yet. This is going to be a really expensive coaching staff for Ohio State. We don't have the numbers back on Arthur Smith just yet, but I would imagine he and Matt Patricia both are going to be like in a $3 million range. And Robby Discher's special teams coach is probably going to be making something like $700,000, $800,000, I guess, not to mention all the other guys on the staff who are already around $1 million or close to it. Like, there was a time when Ohio State was slow in the uptake to pay assistant coaches whatever the market rate was at the time, and now they're more or less like kind of setting the market on that. And I think this could be an indication of what life might be like if they ever remove the revenue sharing cap in player acquisition. But for now, Ohio State is going to apply that to its coaching staff. And it's positioned as well as anybody in the sport, I think, to be this aggressive when it comes to putting their staff together this way.
I'm not sure if I love the rule change. right? That like, is this, it kind of feels like you are creating a system where you're giving the big dogs an advantage. Like this to me is the haves, right? This is what the haves can do when you talk about the haves and the have nots. And just, there's going to be plenty of other programs who are like, we're at 10. We have 10 assistants. That was the rule. We're still sticking at that. We can't pay 12. Like this is not, we can't pay 12 real full-time dudes like at full assistant coach scale. And I can just imagine like how frustrating it might be for teams like that. How frustrating it might be for Brett Bielema to be like, all right, well, our special teams coach left because Ohio State threw a bunch of money at him and he doesn't even, not even one of the main 10 guys, right? He's not going to be recruiting. But if you're Ohio State, that's what you should do. And so this is a reminder for Ohio State fans. And I don't think that Ohio State fans forget it very much, but it's like there's going to be plenty of programs. You know what Purdue thinks when Ohio State goes to 12 assistant coaches? Barry Odom just like walks into his office and just puts his head on his desk for 15 minutes, right? I mean, like there's nothing you can do. So I think Ohio State fans kind of do, but this is one of those, this is like some muscle flexing. This is some money flexing because you're a have. And when you, the more rules you remove, the more chances that the haves are going to have to be a have. JBook, what's your phrase or word?
I would say innovative in the way that Ohio State probably looks like the first college football team that is starting this trend. I'm curious to see if you're going to see other big programs like the Georgias or the Alabamas kind of trend this way. Reaching into the NFL, not every program is going to have the juice like Ohio State does to be able to say, hey, we have 2 former NFL coaches as our coordinators while having 12 full-time assistants. I'm curious to see if you're going to see more NFL guys look at this and say, hey, maybe I want to participate in college football. If I'm going to be paid $3 million plus, I don't have to hit the road for recruiting, and I can just coach ball, call plays, help mentor some of these younger coaches in college. Could you start to see a shift in NFL guys who are circle say, hey, let me get a swing of the bat in college to see how well I can what I can do. When Arthur Smith took this job, the first thing that came to my head was he's positioning himself for the North Carolina job because I think that's the one that he ultimately wants. If Bill Belichick does not perform to that level, I truly believe that Arthur Smith is going to be in running for that head coaching job at North Carolina. So coming from the NFL, going to college, getting Ohio State on your resume as an offensive coordinator with Julius Day and Jeremiah Smith, I think that's only going to bolster his resume to become the next head coach of North Carolina. Now, Alabama, the Clemsons, the Georgias, will they be able to have that cachet to reach into the NFL ranks and say, hey, we're going to bring more high-profile coaches on the staff? I think they're going to try, especially if Ohio State wins big here, because as we already know, this game is a copycat league. You already see with Indiana, everybody wants to get older in their roster following that model. And if Ohio State does extremely well and win big, I can truly see this being a trendsetter in college football.
And again, JBook, if that would happen, if Arthur Smith parlays being the OC at Ohio State into a pretty nice head coaching job in college, that's good for Ohio State, right? It shows the next guy, if you come here, you can do this.
Well, it's Ryan Day's rehab school. I mean, he's taking over the mantle for Nick Saban, but the only difference is I'm sure Nick Saban would have loved to have a lot of those high-profile coaches in his rehab clinic being able to be full-time on-the-field coaches. Now Ryan Day's going to be able to have that opportunity. So you look at what Nick Saban was doing is basically on steroids if you have the resources and the money to be able to field that type of staff.
Okay. Chase Brown, what's your word or phrase to describe this?
Yeah, my phrase was one that's popular, but one that's probably most popular because of Beyonce, and that's if you got it, flaunt it, right? It's kind of the same mindset that Bill brought to the table. Ohio State's one of a few programs in college football that can afford to do this, and they're coming off of a year where they made record revenue, over $366 million that they brought in across the athletic department. And some of that makes up for some losses the previous year. But then also, I'm thinking that they can kind of buy on margin a little bit, expecting what this football season is going to look like. They have those 2 non-conference openers against Ball State and Kent State. But then they also have games against Illinois. They have that game against Oregon. They have a game against Northwestern, which has some intrigue with Chip Kelly returning to the Horseshoe. And then you got the Michigan game. 10-2 team? Are they going to be a team that gets a first round playoff game at home again, like they did a couple of years ago against Tennessee? Like, they're going to be making a lot of money this year that if it's going to go anywhere, it should probably go into the program that's making the most of that revenue, being football. So if you got the money to do it, I think you got to give yourself the best opportunity to win those games. I'm not saying that Ohio State's going into this year expecting that they're going to end it 10-2. I think they're trying to win every single game. Ryan Day reminds us almost every press conference that if you don't think winning is important at Ohio State, try losing a game and see how the fans react. But I do think that it does put Ohio State in a position here to get the most out of the money that it's making. And if they have the opportunity to add extra coaches that don't have to hit the road to recruit and can just focus solely on their responsibility, I think that gives them a great edge on the rest of college football.
Yeah. Yeah. It's being a have, baby. It's kind of a nice place to be right now. Question number 4. This is just because I love the spring game. We got the official date for the spring game is April 18th. Not a surprise. We figured that's the Saturday it would be. But I always get excited when the spring game gets announced because I love the spring game. What do we think? This is the question. What do we think is the future of spring football and spring games like this? Do you keep them as team scrimmages? Would you get to a point where the NCAA would allow you to like play somebody else, like bring in an outside opponent, like Colorado and Syracuse tried to do a little bit ago, and the NCAA said no? Are we going to get to the point where like the whole structure of spring football is different? Is it more in the summer? Does it look more like the NFL? Do you maybe not have a spring game? Do you play a preseason game in August? Like, I just want us to talk about this a little bit, and I want to talk about it by saying, I love the spring game. Please don't kill it. And so go to the spring game. This is, I say it every year. Take your little kid to the spring game. They don't know it's not a real game. And you get to be in one of the most historic stadiums in sport and all the players you know. You don't have to worry about like, who's that Mac guy playing left guard? They're all Ohio State guys. So I don't know how long spring games are going to last. Everything in college football is evolving, but put it on your calendar. If you haven't been to a spring game, if your kids haven't been to a spring game, it's an expensive sport to go to. I know there's a lot of people who are priced out, unfortunately, of major sports these days, but the spring game is for you. Prioritize it, put it on the calendar, cross your fingers for good weather, and go watch some ball in Ohio Stadium because the shoe's a pretty fun place to visit to watch college football. So my answer is, I don't know, but I hope spring games don't die. JBook, what do you think is the future of all this stuff?
I'm a huge fan of the spring game as well, Doug. And when it comes to that game, it looked like for a moment it was starting to trend to be non-existent. Teams were canceling their games because they were afraid that showcasing their young talent was going to be a result of those players getting poached. Now that they canceled that spring transfer window, I do think you're probably going to see teams get back into playing that spring game. When Urban Meyer was here, he always said when it comes to a lot of these young guys who haven't played meaningful snaps, the spring game was a critical measuring point because they're going to be able to perform in front of 80,000 fans. You can't simulate that in scrimmages, in practice. So seeing how those guys react is another data point for them to be able to look at to see if this kid can handle the load of playing at Ohio State. I thought Colorado and Syracuse was onto something last year. I thought it was brilliant that they wanted to do a joint practice and have a competitive spring game with each other. And you bring me down my rabbit hole here because I always said if the NCAA allowed it, just think if Ohio State was able to have like a live spring game against, for example, my alma mater, Ohio University, or something in the spring. Have it look like an NFL preseason type of game. I don't know, charge $20 at the door, split the ticket price 70-30, give the Max team a little kickback here that they can put in their NIL pot and inject that into the NIL war chest. And I just think that maybe the way things are trending, since we're so far down the road that we're looking like, hey, this is miniature NFL, that having these type of preseason camps against another team would not be the worst idea.
I really like it. I would be for that. Is like to continue something that fans can come see and have a good time, have a little competition. I certainly would be in favor of JBook. I think that's a good idea. Chase, what do you want to see? What do you think we're going to see with this stuff?
Unfortunately, I'm going to hurt you by saying that I would get rid of the spring game. However, I'm going to hopefully counter with something that will make you feel better. I think
Killed me, Chase. You just killed me.
what we have with the college football calendar is one where I think everybody would benefit by it changing except the SEC. And I know how much you like to dunk on the SEC.
Wait,
all right. So
got my attention.
Let's go the other direction. Because I think college football has to figure out a way to get this season done by January 1st. I know that there have been many people who have argued that the national championship game should be played at the Rose Bowl on January 1st. I am a huge proponent of that. I think it would be great to just get the regular season over. Maybe we get rid of conference championship games, then we immediately go into the playoffs. The football season's over by January 1st. Portal opens January 2nd, closes a couple of weeks later. And then if we're really going to continue with this narrative that these football players, that really any athletes are still student athletes, I think it would be a great time for football specifically to really take the spring semester as one where those students could go to class, they could go to the weight room, they could develop their bodies. Also, it would benefit, in my opinion, one of the greatest issues with the current college football calendar is how many players, high schoolers, are leaving their high schools after their first semester of their senior year to go join the teams in January. I would love for these kids to be kids, to, get to play a spring sport, get to go to prom, get to do all the really fun things about being an 18-year-old in your hometown. And then once the spring semester ends for both high school and college, we start kind of a OTA type thing, like modeling after the NFL. Can we have a freshman mini camp? Can we have an OTA style thing that happens in June? Then we build toward a preseason that has preseason games. Could Ohio State host an OU, a Kent State, a smaller school in Ohio that then they can kind of benefit everyone in this realm? Like, those programs are never going to meet the standard that Ohio State continues to strive for year after year. Could they be building up some of the smaller programs in the state of Ohio by facing them in the preseason? Now, I brought up the SEC because I think they're kind of the only conference that would push back against this. And really the number one reason is because, it's so hot in the summertime. What are our players going to do? We can't practice outside. Well, here's the deal. You get the benefit of practicing year-round in every other sport the North does not get. In baseball, you get to practice all year long. In soccer, you get to practice all year long. In softball and every other sport. In football, you guys have indoor facilities too. If it's too hot, just go inside, practice, and have your OTA session in there. Get everybody on this same calendar that maximizes the athletes' abilities to be students, the high schoolers' ability to finish their high school career before they get to college, and then build up some of the smaller programs in Ohio with preseason games. I just think that the spring game model, it just creates a very bloated, full calendar for these players, which we saw kind of at its peak last year with Ohio State. They delayed the start of their spring game because the season went until January 20th. Then they had a national championship celebration, and they had to go through all of that, winter workouts, before they really got to start their spring. Could it be beneficial for these calendars to kind of space out a little bit and give teams the opportunity to really build out their roster without all the congestion that happens around December and January?
You might have me, Chase. You might have me. Solving the early high school enrollees, I think, is a very interesting part of that, because something that started off, 20 plus years ago with Dante Whitner enrolling at Ohio State earlier, like the couple guys that did that. Now all of a sudden it's 90% of the kids is practically a requirement. Like, for what? I think the NCAA should ban it and just say you can't do it. Like no one's allowed. It was a loophole that became the norm. So just ban it outright. Say you're not allowed to do it. Yeah. Or if you do this, this is even better, because people are always looking for loopholes. It doesn't even exist. There's no reason to do it because there's nothing. There's no practice to have. So Chase, you didn't come up with this in 9 minutes this morning, right? You've been thinking about this.
No, I've been stewing over it for a long time. Ever since Ohio State dealt with, I was not a big fan of having to write almost 35 or however many articles of Ohio State players entering the transfer portal immediately after Ohio State lost in the Cotton Bowl. I would love for all of that stuff to happen in a little bit of a less busy time for all of us. But I do think also that you bring in this new wave of freshmen at a time where your whole roster is changing. Like, who's even in the Woody between January 2nd and January 16th when the transfer portal's open? They're bringing in all these freshmen that are expecting to work out immediately, to start practice immediately and get on the field. Like, just let them be kids. I'm just such a big fan of letting them be kids and just get to enjoy the end of their high school tenure and get to do all the things that we all got to do, because that's what was normal when we were kids, right? It's what we all got to experience. And I think to rob them of that, maybe that's too strong of a word, but I just think that for them not to experience it is something that I think is a miss on part of college athletics.
I love the idea of this, Landis. How a man who was tired of writing transfer capsules changed the face of college football. Landis, you got a good idea for us?
I kind of like Chase's idea. I will say, I think like a lot of like the rhetoric around spring games last year was almost entirely about the spring portal window, and now that we don't have that, I would expect a lot of that to die down. So I don't know that the traditional spring game is like as threatened as it felt like it was a year ago. What exactly those look like, I'm not entirely sure. And even Ryan Day said, like, we'll figure out what exactly the spring game looks like. He also said that last year, then they had like a perfectly normal spring game that everyone was accustomed to. So I would assume that they're going to do the same thing this year. I don't hate the idea of bringing in somebody new. I do think, there's the logistical concerns with that one. The others, like, are a lot of the guys who would play in that are young and perhaps new to college football. Is 14 practices enough before you throw them out there in a game like that? I think if you were going to have the outside opponent scrimmage, I would prefer to see that probably later in the year after some more practices than I would after just 14 in spring ball. The calendar is like the biggest issue with college football, and it's like slowly but surely we're I don't know, surely, but certainly slowly, we're chipping away at it. So maybe there's an opportunity down the road to do something like what Chase is talking about. I likewise would be very much in favor of not putting the pressure on these freshmen to early enroll. I had not considered it, but like, it really struck me the other day when Ryan Day said, like, the only guy that is not early enrolled is Tucker Smith, and like, they have all of their freshmen, a 27 player class, 26 of them are already on campus, and all the transfers are already here. And like, on one hand, that's great, right? You get everybody together. You can start building that cohesion early, and I'm sure the coaches would probably prefer that than not. But I really do not like what it does to a lot of the high school kids, taking away the spring sports. The prom, like, guys can still go to prom, some of them, but like, oh, there's, just, you have 4 more months to be a teenager before you become basically a professional athlete. Why not give guys an opportunity? So if there's something we could do with spring ball, or the idea of spring ball in terms of pushing it back, I think I'd be in favor of that. But for the time being, I guess I would say that I don't think spring games are on the chopping block now that we have eliminated the spring portal window.
I will say, sorry, Doc, I will say I totally agree. Try to get these kids as much time back in high school as possible. The problem that we're running into is the money issue.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because right now, when you look at what Indiana was doing, and Ohio State, I don't think they would have taken 28 high school commits if they knew that college football was trending in this direction. So if you're going to pay a high school kid a significant amount of money, these coaches are going to be extremely paranoid about making sure that these kids are ready to play or willing to contribute going forward. Because the last thing that you can do, pay a kid $1 million, he shows up to campus, doesn't play his freshman year, and enters the portal. You've essentially burned $1 million paying that kid to commit to you straight out of high school. So I think a lot of these college football coaches, they're going to feel the pressure and the squeeze to say, hey, we need to accelerate these kids and get them on the field as quickly as possible, especially when they can just up and leave with a drop of a dime, considering we just paid a significant amount of money to get him here in the first place. So that's the one pushback that I can see the coaches saying, hey, we want these kids on campus as soon as possible so that we can try to install as much to get them ready for the spring or fall ball, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good discussion. I like trying to solve problems. I mean, we got some actual solutions here. So good job by everybody. Question number 5, we're getting off ball a little bit, and we're getting into a little JBook. And this is the inspiration for the question. Question number 5. What have been the most interesting or enduring nicknames in your life, and do you like them? And JBook, to who are you Jonah Booker, and to who are you JBook? Like, what percent of people in your life know you as JBook?
I will say in college, I was called that. Teammates will call me that. And so a lot of those guys that went to high school with, that in the locker room, they would call me that. But the family, no one.
No. Okay.
No one calls me that. So
Okay.
so I would say all through college and in sports, that was the name that the players and the teammates would give me. And so I just kind of stuck with it.
Okay. You got any other nicknames you ever been called besides JBook, or is JBook so good that's the one?
Oh, man. You're going to embarrass me now, Doug.
Yeah, I know. That's why we're doing it.
When I was younger, and you know what? And I've never said this live, but I used to be called Jonah Bear when I was a kid. And I know they said I looked like a teddy bear when I was a little kid. And so my mother and older family members, they still actually call me that to this day. But nobody's ever asked me that, Doug. So that's a great question.
I kind of like that. Can you imagine that a little bit? If people are like, who knows a lot about Ohio State football? Jonah Bear. That guy knows everything. So if you ever get tired of JBook, feel free to bring that back in, Jonah Bear.
No.
Chase Brown, you got any nicknames for us?
No, unfortunately. My nickname is actually probably how you just said it. People will say my full name very quickly, and that's kind of the nickname, like Chase Brown. Because I'll be honest, my name's not really great. It's a verb and a color, and it's 2 syllables. It's really hard to make a nickname out of it. And so, for my whole life, any coaches, any friends, they just say my name really quickly. Later in life, the past couple of years, people that meet me have nicknamed me CB, which is, it fits. It's pretty good. There was at one point maybe where people tried out Brownie, but I didn't really like it. I pushed back against that because it just wasn't cool. I probably got that nickname around late elementary school and middle school, and I was probably deathly afraid that it was going to stick with me for the rest of my time in grade school. So I definitely have gone my life without really a great nickname, which is unfortunate, but I do appreciate that people try to give me one when they can.
Yeah. Bill Simmons was talking about that this week with Drake May. How everyone just calls him Drake May. No one calls him Drake. No one calls him May. You're like that. You're Chase Brown. No one calls you Chase. No one calls you Brown. Chase Brown.
Should I be Chase Brown then? Should I just model after the Drake May? The Drake May?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Chase Brown. Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. That's going to stick. Philly Billy, you got any nicknames?
I don't know that I have any that I would say are enduring. In my family, I'm Little Billy because I'm the 4th William Landis. Although I'm bigger, I'm my dad's a big guy, but I'm bigger than him. So at a certain point, it's can you stop calling me Little Billy because I'm almost 6'6", and my dad's 6'4". My grandfather, who's also named Bill Landis, is 5'10". So I don't know that I get called that so much anymore. I've had a couple. Our friend Ari Wassmer would say that my nickname is Dallaby, but it's not. He's the only one who calls me that.
He's the only one. Oh.
Yeah, it's my gamer tag on PlayStation because when I made it when I was in high school, someone said you should make it Dollar Bill, and I was like, I'll just make it Dallaby. But no one called me that until Ari discovered that one time we were playing games online. So he calls me that, but really nobody else does. One year, one of my baseball teams, we gave each other nicknames, and I was Snack Bar for obvious reasons. But that didn't stick. And then there was another year where I was playing baseball in college for a new team, and I didn't really know anybody on the team, and they called me Big Country, but that only lasted for a summer too. So I would have been cool, I think, if Big Country had some sticking power, but I didn't really know any of those people, and I'm not really friends with any of them now. So that was just kind of a short-term thing. I guess Bill is short for William. I don't know if that counts. But otherwise, no, I don't think I have one other than the people in my family call me Billy, but nobody else really calls me that.
I think there's been a Big Country. I think we should call you Big City.
Big City. Yeah, Brian Reeves, right? Is Big Country.
Yeah. Big City. Big City. I like
Big City. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone called like Lesmerises, my last name. So everyone called me Les Mis, like for Les Miserables. In college, the guy who lived next door to me freshman year just assigned nicknames to everybody in the dorm immediately, and all of them had a swear word in it. So I was Fat S, like fat crap, which is just like, what a great nickname that is. It's like, welcome to college. Hey, Fat S, how are you? And then I had like a breakdown one day where someone said like, hey, look, it's the Fat S. And I was like, no, it's not the. It's Fat S, capital F, capital S. It's a proper name. If you're going to call me it, do it the right way. Thankfully, that didn't stick until it came back today. Then my fraternity, you had to have a nickname for something, and everybody in my fraternity was nuts, and my friend and I were kind of boring, so they called us White and Bread, like white bread, and so I was bread in that combo. And now French vanilla. And French vanilla. So like I'm boring and my last name is French, and that's how people decide to nickname me things.
I like
so
bread.
Nicknames are good.
You could be
you
bread.
Like bread? Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. We could do that. Big City and Bread. Is that better than Philly Billy and French vanilla? Welcome to the Big City and Bread show. That's actually pretty good.
It's not bad.
Big City and Bread.
Good.
That's like our alternate show. JBook and Chase Brown, thank you for being here on Around the Shoe. We appreciate you guys being here. Jonah Booker, just tell the people where they can find you, what you have coming up, and the people who are like, man, I gotta hear and know more about what this guy thinks. Where can they find you, JBook?
You can always find us on the Bucknuts Friday show. Myself and Dave Biddle, we always do the Friday morning show. And if you want to tune in on Twitter at JBook_37, that's where you can find me.
All right, JBook, thanks for that. Chase, where can they the good folks find you talking and writing about Ohio State?
Yeah, 11 Warriors, Monday through Friday in the off season. I'm writing school sessions, basically a recap of yesterday or a few days recent news for Ohio State, and I'm commenting on that. Also on X at @ChaseABrown__. Unfortunately, again, because my name is common, I don't have a great username on X because there's a million Chase Browns. I wish it could be easier to find, but yeah, I'll be on there, and then also doing some YouTube stuff with 11 Warriors. We have our channel with the Dubcast, which George Eisner does Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm usually on the Monday show to talk with him about the latest in Ohio State news. So yeah, those are where you can find me.
Landis, what do we got going on over at the Bill and Doug Substack?
I've been spending like the last week watching a lot of Arthur Smith stuff. So I'm like, I keep telling other people like, I'm going to write something. I'm finally going to write something. That'll be up this week. I watched I watched 3 different games. I watched a game from when he's the Titans, a game with the Falcons, a game with the Steelers, to try to figure out sort of like what he's about and go to apply all that to what Ohio State's about and how that marriage might work. So that'll be coming up this week on the Substack page.
And I'm finally finishing a story about how Devin Sanchez's freshman season was actually an example of what true freshmen in this era should do, how Ohio State's got to get them on the field through the bumps and make sure you keep them around, and then they have them emerge on the other side. So we'll keep having shows here on this YouTube channel, on this podcast feed. You can find us on the Substack, Bill and Doug, OSU.substack.com. For now, thanks to Jonah Booker. Thanks to Chase Brown. Appreciate the expertise, appreciate the insight and the time, gentlemen. On behalf of Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Around the Shoe on the Bill and Doug Show.